Strap in, lads, because this is a very personal video for me. I'm going to do a review analysis of Terranigma. This is by far one of the most impressive RPGs I've ever seen in the history of RPGs. It was developed by Quintet, which is known for some very, very good games like this, such as this, like Soul Blazer and Illusion of Gaia. Terranigma was the first game that I played by Quintet. Afterwards, I did Soul Blazer afterwards, which was also really, really, really good, and Illusion of Gaia. And then I replayed this game and just beat it again because it had been years and I kind of forgotten a lot of it. It was an amazing journey being able to play this again, not remembering everything too well, and just kind of feel like it's the first playthrough all over again. It was a very great journey. Anyhow, but also not everything has flaws. Nothing is perfect. I will be discussing a few things that I did not like about this game, and so the game is created. The story is created by the guy that was involved with Falcom, who created East 1, 2, and 3. The story wise, he was one of them, and so you could see how his storytelling has his craftsmanship and storytelling has gotten better to this game. In a developer interview, the staff said that this is the pinnacle of what Quintet had been doing. Everything taken from different games put into one complete masterpiece. The game revolves around a lot about creation and destruction, light and darkness, good and evil. It explores the themes of dualism, as I was just saying. The story in itself is huge. It's very huge. It's very, and it is, the dialogue in this game is just massive. It's just done with such remarkable craftsmanship. This game, its story and dialogue will always have the greatest of praise for me. One of the issues I had with the game, however, was the battle system. Now, it's fun going around stabbing through things and jumping and slashing down at things and just constantly poking things with the many swords you get. But the magic system, it just feels like it didn't really have to be there. The spells don't. The game doesn't really tell you what the spells do. Maybe the manual does, but I never really found a use for the magic. And in my last playthrough, I tried to use magic. I mean, the only thing that I really found relevant was I think it's the bone one, the one that takes you out of a dungeon, because there's parts in the game where you kind of get stranded and at the end of a dungeon, you got to come back manually. So that was the only one that really seemed relevant to me. The second thing I had a problem with this game is the power creep in terms of the level up system. I know if you played this game casually, I'm pretty sure, like me, you hit a terrifying a terrifying section when you fight Bloody Mary, because I mean, you could say, yeah, the leveling system is broken because you could be under level and do almost nothing, and then you could be a little higher level, and then just the bosses are a complete joke. But for this boss, you do have to do some grinding if you want the fight to be easy. Now, granted, the manual does tell you should be at level 25 when you fight Bloody Mary, but in this age, people don't really have the manual. A lot of emulating is going on, and it's a lot of people had frustration, headache when it came to the Bloody Mary boss. And like, yeah, that's like I was losing my mind on my last playthrough. I think I spent an hour on that fight, and because the boss is designed to hit you multiple times if you get hit, and it does a lot of damage. So it goes through your bulbs pretty quick. The game starts with Ark, who in my opinion is a very well done main character. He is not like Link, where he's mute, can't speak, traumatized, whatever. I don't know what Link went through, but Ark does have a lot of dialogue in the important scenes, and the game still has parts of the dialogue where you can choose what Ark says. And so Now, he was a very likable character. I really liked Art, and it's painful to watch his slow descent into madness towards the end of the game, where he starts to question everything, and it's told you have one more day left to live. Yeah, that's I feel bad for my boy Ark, but he's a great man. He's a great man. So in this game, there's two worlds. There's the underworld, and then there's the surface world. A light world and a dark world. But the dark world is a copy of parts of the light world, and that's where Ark lives. Ark lives in the village of Krista. This village where everybody's eternally blowing bubbles. And when the game starts, Ark's having a reoccurring nightmare. Now, I don't know if the writers just did that to make it open to interpretation what it means, but I've read some theories about this recurring nightmare that Ark has, but I don't know the meaning of it. I have to look into it more, what the interpretations are for that. He's woken up by Elle, who I think in some translations is referred to as Art's girlfriend. And so you start the game where Art's just this troublemaker, kind of just causes trouble around the town, chasing chickens into people's houses and throwing pottery and plucking the vegetation. So he has a bad reputation amongst the adults. Unbeknownst to him, he is about to be used for something very catastrophic and also good in a sense. There is a blue door in one of the houses that the villagers have been told by the elder that they have to completely avoid and stay away from. It is not said why. Now, what happens is, Ark, being the troublemaker that he is, he breaks the door open, and right away he's with his friends, and right away they hear a voice come out of there, and everybody gets creeped out and it gets out, but Ark stays. And so you go down, and you go downstairs, and you get to what looks like a Pandora's box. And when you touch it, Yomi comes out. And Yomi, if it's revealed at the end of the game that Yomi is the original creature that everything evolved from, and Ark has woken it up, and it basically tags along and decides to help Ark during its journey. His character development, you can tell something is going on with Yomi towards the end, because he starts to get very intolerable of Ark. Starts almost like he hates him towards the end, and eventually you find out that Yomi was to use Ark for resurrecting the scientist, and then after that to kill him. We'll get into that later. So after you do that, the villagers all become frozen, besides the elder, which is interesting. And so the elder says, you have to go on a journey now, because you did this whole mess. You got to venture out in the underworld and go to these towers and resurrect life on Earth. And Ark, he was a carefree little, I guess, farm boy. And all of a sudden now he has the role of a god, and he doesn't really want to do any of this, but he has to, because Elle, his girlfriend, is also among those that was frozen. When you go outside, you see a very, very beautiful music to very interesting graphics, how you're supposed to be below the earth or something like that. And it shows you that these guys really, really pushed the Super Nintendo past its limitations. They were trying out new technology for like the resurrection scenes, because if you read the developer interviews that have been translated, the staff, the screenwriter, they really wanted you to receive a big impact from the resurrection scenes. They really wanted you they really wanted for you to think about those and question, think about creation and life and what humans are doing to the world. And so the resurrection scenes are very, very beautiful and show some high-end tech on the Super Nintendo. And so as you clear the towers, you're resurrecting the continents. There are some optional towers. There are some optional continents you can find for some secrets. And the boss fights are are, it's like your typical JRPG, J action RPG. You slowly learn how the boss's patterns, and once you figure that out, it's just attacking and getting out of the way when you have to. The and there's also a lot of puzzles. Now there are some things in this game that you are basically on your own and you have to figure out. But there are some parts in the game that you, like the casual player can get stuck for hours trying to trigger whatever causes the next part of the game to move on. But it really forces you to explore the world once you have access to it. As you start getting the souls back and the villagers become unfrozen, you find gear, armor, weapons. The weapons in the game, a lot. There is a weakness that certain enemies have to certain weapons, and some weapons have effects. So it's good to look at your weapons because I didn't realize weapons had effects the first time I played the game. Armor also, there's armor that has certain effects. That certain armor to make you immune to certain things, and so but the gear in this game is very very creative. I also do. I mean, they have an option where when your inventory is full, you gotta throw away your gear. So you kind of keep like a best of the gear that you found. And so by this time, you clear the towers, you come back to Krista, and you resurrected the world. And the next goal for Ark is to go to the surface world. And the Elder has this whole plan to use Ark to resurrect the world, but to resurrect a very specific scientist that was working on immortality and creating people in the zombies that are immortal. But as you see, when Ark looks at one of the zombies, they look sad. I mean, life has to come to an end. If you live forever, that's just unnatural. And so they send you to the surface world, and that's where the resurrection of the birds starts, and animals, and eventually humans. And it's just beautiful seeing how you end up in a barren wasteland, and as you take out the bosses, the land resurrects, and they restructure the maps to be alive and beautiful, and then just the beautiful resurrection scenes. And so around this time, you start to meet new characters, like the black boy that skates, who's a cool guy. There's the girl that has the power to create illusions. There was a very sad love story between her and Ark that I'll get into later. There's the guy with the blue armor, I think Royd, I think so, and then Frida, who is the swordsman that protects the princess. And so Ark is on this journey to resurrect mankind and the whole world. And as you go through the towns, you learn about how the world is at this sort of primitive type. Well, not primitive because they still have technology, but just like old time technology. At the same time, there are some cities like Neo Tokyo that are more modern and mechanized, and those kind of things. And from here on, as the game unfolds, it bombards you with these epic cutscenes and dialogues that are just incredible. This game really does change the way that you think about things, about yourself, about life, about the earth. The people that developed this game, they were very politically conscious people. They're philosophers. There's a lot of deep themes that are explored in this game. A lot that will help you expand your mind. Some of the highlights in the game was the Dragoon Castle, because a lot happens there. I mean, you're kind of just walking around trying to avoid guards, but a lot of really good cutscenes happen between Roy and Frida, and then the girl with the makes the images tries to kill you, and she gets slapped in the face. That's a sense knocked into her. One of my favorite scenes, even though it's one of the sad scenes, is when you're in the festival. and it plays this, this cheery, upbeat, festive music. And behind the town, there's a statue where lovers go to confess their love for each other. And so this girl that creates mirages, you sort of help her earlier in a town that is full of zombies that don't know that they're zombies. And though she doesn't like Ark at first, she falls in love with him. And when you get to the carnival city, she's there. She's eating cotton candy, I think. And she tells you, "Hey, meet me here at night and tell me how you feel about me." And she tells Ark, "I love you." And so when you go to sleep in the carnival, it triggers where you wake up in the middle of the night, and you go to the back, and you see Elle, your girlfriend from the underworld, instead, and she says how she wants to be with you forever, and that kind of thing. Well, it turns out it was all an illusion. She was playing. She projected into reality what Ark felt in his heart, and she basically sees that Ark doesn't love her. He basically rejects her because he already has somebody. He loves Elle, and so she gets really mad at Ark. Says that she hates him, and she storms off. And then as you walk back to the carnival, it turns back in the daytime, and the festive music still plays. So I really, really love that scene. And every time that I go to that city, and I hear the cheery carnival music, and watch the people and all the food and the candy, it's a very bittersweet sadness that you feel, because you know what happened between this girl and Ark. It was a real shame. So that was a very powerful and well done scene in my opinion. During my first playthrough, one of the scenes that had a big impact is the one where you're in the snowland and Ark causes an avalanche, and he wakes up buried inside of a cave with I think it was a deer. It's one of them was dead. It turns out that, well, if you think about it, it's even more tragic because Ark was the one that caused the avalanche. He's the one that killed that deer or that goat or whatever it was. And so Ark, having the ability to talk to animals during that time, the animal tells him, "Yeah, that's my husband. He's dead." And the animal tells Ark, "We're gonna find a way out of here." And so the days go by, and Ark's freezing. It's nighttime. It's completely pitch black in there. In the morning time, they're hungry. They're starving, and she basically offers Ark to eat her dead husband, and she eats it too. And Ark has this huge guilt that, no, I can't eat your husband. But the deer is so passive and apathetic about it. He's like, she's like, "You gotta survive. You gotta do it." And so I guess Ark does it, and eventually the deer finds a part of the wall that was kind of hollow or kind of weak and breaks it. And luckily, the Ark finds a way out, but the deer cannot climb the wall. So the deer says, "Well, you must go. I'll surely find a way out of this." The deer's dead. I mean, it's not gonna get out of there. But the first time that I played that game, that scene traumatized me. Just the whole her just offering the husband like that as food. But it's another example of a very powerful scene in Terranigma. Besides that, so then you find out that there's a city that looks just like Krista. Even the people are the same, because it turns out there's an Arab. It turns out that there is a light version of everything that's in the dark world. And so in the light world, there's a princess that's in a part of who's in a castle, and she looks just like Elle. And Ark takes an interest in this mission that's the king is doing, where they're trying to find a groom, and the groom is whoever can cure her muteness, because she doesn't talk. Obviously she's gone through some traumatic things. So Ark, because she looks just like Elle, he decides to find a way to cure this muteness of her. And you find out that the village of Krista was a village in the surface world that that has very powerful gear hidden in the city, and the king and Columbus were on a quest to get this gear, and it caused genocide where the king ended up in his evil rage killing everybody in the village except for the L of the surface world. And I mean, there's wolves that protect it now, and I think the wolves are like the spirits of the villagers or whatever. And so Elle was the surface world. Elle was a little girl, and she was adopted and turned into a princess. And Art discovers this as he's going through the forest trying to find a cure. And so she makes the surface world Elle aware of this. And so when she realizes that the king did this, she kills the king. I think she poisoned him or something like that, and then she runs away from the castle. And she gets, I think she gets kidnapped at that point. And Frida is the one that killed her parents. You know, Frida is a swordswoman of the castle that is sworn to protect the princess at all costs. But back when the king had the village raided, Frida was the one commanded to kill her parents. So she did it because it was ordered. So that's why it was her job. That's why she did it. She didn't want to do it. But she swore to protect the princess against anything because of what she did to the parents. So that's just some of the lore when it comes to the castle and surface cell. One of the parts of the game that I also didn't like was the part where you're in the zombie town. I just didn't really like that level. There are too many enemies. It's just a cluster of enemies just hitting you, bombarding you, and overall, it's just like that part of the game gives off a very doomy, depressive feel. I just didn't really like it. And so around this time, you start to gain more access to the map. You are given a boat. Eventually, you're given a plane. And one of the funny things about this game is in Neo Tokyo, the Quintet staff put themselves in one of the buildings, and where they kind of talk about how they kind of hate their job and all. They ask Ark about development of the game. There's a room that has the composers for the music in it, and you can talk to them. So I thought that was a very funny thing to add. Also, another highlight of this game is the part with Lame, I think, the little lion, the little cub. So when you resurrect after you resurrect the animals, you end up meeting some lions, and they ask you for a favor to help the cub that is going off on this journey that the kings must go through. It's like a trial for cubs who are going to become kings. If they don't make the trial, they're not good enough to be king. And so they sent the little cub out, but turns out he hasn't been back in a long time, and they sent Ark to go check up on him. So Ark goes to the canyon or the cliff or whatever they were, and meets the lion. I mean the cub. And the cub's a cool, cute character. I like how he calls Ark the big guy. He's like, hey, big guy. And so you kind of have to do the work for him as you go through the canyon, killing off enemies. And the cub is constantly saying, oh, yeah, this is easy. This test is but yeah, that's because Ark's doing all the work. But it does get to a point where you find the mud doll or the mud boss. And though Ark manages to weaken it, he gets tricked by it. Because, the mud boss took advantage of Ark's gullibleness. And so you as a player end up falling, but the cub is still there. And now the mud boss is gonna be going after the cub. And now they're fighting, and you're kind of just thinking, like, okay, so the cub, he was kind of weak, but maybe he can do it. And so you kind of have to be forced to just watch the fight unfold, and you can't do anything about it. But luckily, the cub beats him. And then the mud boss tries to play for fool again on the cub. Says, oh, I was being really bad. Sorry. But the cub kills him. Anyways, clears the trial and becomes the king. Later on in Neo Tokyo, the lion ends up in the sewer system because it thinks that the sunstone that some girl had was his sunstone or something like that. So you meet the lion again Well, by that time, there's a point where Art loses the ability to talk to animals, but the lion does recognize him. And there's a scene where you save the girl because the lion's chasing after her for the sunstone. And when Art gets there, the cub recognizes him. And though you can't understand anything, it's obvious that the cub is like, oh yeah, that's Art. And so Art can't communicate with him, but tells him, yeah, you need to be cool and protect this girl. And let's see, how else? Now, towards the end, you do resurrect this scientist. And he was doing all kinds of things. I think he had created the Osmodeus virus that supposedly kill a lot of people, had a high mortality rate. And so that basically covers the majority of what I wanted to talk about. And towards the end, so the scientist, he himself meets an unfortunate end. With all his own technology ends up killing him as he gets accidentally sliced up by a propeller. That was too bad for him. And then, so towards the end of the game, the characters that you meet throughout the game kind of form like a group that help you towards stopping this guy. And I thought that was very well executed. This game has very, very likable characters. There was not a single character that I did not like in this game. They were all good. Like in Dragoon Castle, it was epic to see how Roy was actually not as cold-blooded as you thought. He was on a mission to avenge a friend. When you visit the nomads, one of them says that a guy had passed by talking about avenging a friend. He's talking about Roy. And so after more resurrecting and killing bosses, meeting people, Ark ends up having to rescue the princess because some guy with really bad English kidnapped her. And it turns out Roy was working for him, the guy with the blue armor. And Roy finds out that this guy killed a friend of his. And so it's not shown, but Roy takes this guy out. And he ends up running into Frida, and they both kind of have like a romance thing going on, as it was kind of portrayed in one of the dreams that Ark had. Now, unfortunately for Roy and Frida, they meet in an unfortunate end. When you get to Garuda's flying spaceship, they managed to blow it up to stop the scientists, but because they don't understand technology, blowing up the computers broke the planes, whatever they're going to use to escape. And so, after the scientist accidentally dies in an accident, he says that you're all going to die because you destroy the computers that are going to help the functionality of the whatever escape plan they were going to use. And so, luckily, a seagull happened to make it up there, and was able to take Art away to the safety, but Frida and Roy couldn't. They had to stay behind, and they said they'd find a way because humans are they persevere during hard times. But when you watch the cutscene when the ship crashes and explodes, it's pretty likely that they died right there, and you never see them again. Also. So, along the way, Art dies. He's resurrected. He finds the light version of himself that was dead. And he ends up. There's a lot of confusing scenes where you have to resurrect the hero, who is the light version of Art. And once you do, he turns to a baby. Why, I don't know. How do you end up back in the surface world of Krista? I don't know. And that's when Yomi shows his betrayal, that he tries to kill you. And El has this unexplained power of sending people to like another dimension or something. I don't know what it is, but what happens is the back in Krista, the elder sends El to the surface world to kill a baby. Well, that baby is Ark, as he's trying to resurrect himself as the true hero. And in this cutscene, we're back at Stockholm, which is basically the surface world of Krista, and Ark is there as a baby, and the princess is there on her own, isolating. She went back to the village where all her people were killed, because it's a village. This Stockholm is a village in the middle of nowhere. That as I have said, is what Krista is a copy of. And so she leaves for a second, and then the L of Krista shows up and prepares to kill the baby. and so the surface world L catches onto it and stops her just long enough for Ark to resurrect himself back to his normal state. That's when Yomi is like, "Oh, it's going wrong. I gotta kill Ark," and then the L from Krista manages to grab onto Yomi and says, "Ark, I'm sorry. I really wanted to be with you, but it's come down to this." And she sacrifices herself by sending her and Yomi to a different dimension. It's unclear. It's not explained what the power does. It does not explain how she got these powers. Because where did she learn how to do this? And so Ark loses his girlfriend. She's dead, but he seems to have taken an interest now in the surface world L. But in the dialogue option, you can tell her that you actually don't really care about her. You really cared about the one that died because that was the actual girlfriend, and so it makes her sad. But that's just the way that things are. And alongside the way, you have the ability. You have something. I think ActRaiser does it, but you have opportunity to world build. So the cities have a guy that kind of hangs around that tells you their economic state or status, and if you deliver certain items, trigger certain things, say certain things, make certain choices, right, you can turn these cities to become successful. So it has a really neat side quest of world building that you could take advantage of. That I think was very cool about this game. I never completed it because as soon as I beat it, I pretty much stopped playing it. But I will definitely, next time that I play this game, I'll definitely try to go for the 100% completion and try to see how these worlds look like how these cities develop as I continue to build them. And so at the end of the game, you figure out the whole plan that you're being used to resurrect the scientists in the world. And the goal is for the scientists to work with Dark Gaia, which is the devil, and creating and making immortality possible, and turning everybody into mindless zombies, which seems to be the case, or sad zombies. And so at the very end of the game, you go back to Krista in the underworld, and the elder is like, "Okay, so you kind of were supposed to be dead, but you're still alive, and you know too much. So your last trial now is to defeat the devil, or I guess Dark Gaia, because in America there's problems with religion and they have to censor stuff. And so you go to the middle of the sun, which is weird, and you fight the devil, and you take the devil out. Now, I mean, it's an epic boss fight with epic boss battle music, epic final boss battle music. And just the fights they're refreshing, they're unique. The difficulty in the game, yeah, it can be hard when it comes to Bloody Mary or the machine in the factory, but it's well executed. They're all fun. They're all fun to do. Like when you fight Bloody Mary, how she's chanting she's singing a scary song at you, and you have to hit the right one, and then she does the Simon Says thing. Like these developers were very creative with these dungeons and bosses and cutscenes and dialogues. Very, very creative. And so you kill the devil after two phases of fights, and Ark's mission is pretty much finished. You go back to the Rio, the surface world Krista, Stockholm, and the light Gaia, or I guess God, tells you that you're because of what's happened, the entire dark world is gonna disappear because you killed Dark Gaia, but that includes you. And so so he tells you, or Ark, that your body is going to disappear within the next 24 hours. And turns out you were really just a copy of whatever Ark was in the surface world. You were just a copy. You're something that was just created like that. And he tells Ark that since it's your last day on Earth before you disappear, you might as well live it in peace and be happy for the short amount of time you have left. And so God takes Ark back to Krista, but basically at the beginning of the game, except the elder's not there, and the door, I think it's just a closet at this point. And so Ark has like a crisis, like a mental crisis. He's like, what was I fighting for? He's like, I did all this. I resurrected the world and everything. But but he says that I was used, and he feels that he was more of a burden to the world than help. And he said, if I had never just gone into that door, this would never have happened, and I would still be living my carefree farm boy life with Elle, who is gone because she's dead. And so Ark just, you know, he's depressed, probably even crying at the end of the game as he's going to Krista and everybody's there. Because when you talk to the villagers in Krista, they're acting like nothing ever happened, and they can see from the dialogue, that Art is very serious. He has a very serious look on his face. He's spacing out. If you were told you have one more day to be alive, of course you'd feel the way that Art could feel. And God even resurrected El, so El was there too. And so you spend the last part of the game kind of just going around the city, trying to just enjoy your last day. And once you go to sleep, Art goes into a deep sleep and dreams his last dream, where he dreams of being a bird flying over the world as the world continues to grow and grow older. And so the ending music starts to play, and it shows you the Ark as a seagull flying around the world, flying by the trains, by planes, and the music starts to play. It's like a mystical yet sad tune, and then everything, and then Elle kind of tells you, like, it's not all that bad. We'll be reborn, and when we're reborn, we will find each other again. Because one of the things that the game explores is the theme of that there are that two people who have made a promise to themselves will continue to meet and be together as they in different reincarnations in the next life. And so Elle believes that she will see Ark again, and Ark disappears. Now here's where it gets very confusing. If you watch the credits and you watch it to the end, there is another scene. So now we're back in the surface world, and the surface world Elle is in the Stockholm, which is the real version of Krista, and she's on her own. Everybody's dead. She just, after Frida's dead, Roy's dead. She escaped the castle. She just lives there, I guess, as in solitary now. That's all she has left. And she hears a knocking at the door in the middle of the night. She says, "Oh, it's almost midnight." She goes to the door. She opens it, and she stares for a couple of seconds and runs out the door. Now, what everybody is saying is that was probably Ark, but how will we? Why would that be Ark? God told him he had one more day to live before he disappeared. But maybe God meant that he would disappear from the dark world, but he would stay in the light world. It's unclear. This part's open to interpretation. And so the game ends with the end, and you hear the theme of Christus Daunting, which is a beautiful song. And it's just a great ending. It's sad what happens to Ark. It's tragic. It'll make you feel sad and empty when you beat the game. But at least at the end, it adds something optimistic that maybe Ark is still there, and he managed to, even though it's not the Elle that was his girlfriend in the underworld, it's the light version Elle, who is still Elle, and they could have a future together. But it's in contradiction of what Ark believes in, because Ark, I would imagine, loves the original Elle, not the new one. And so that's Terranigma. It's deep. This is improvised. I don't have no script for this. I'm just going off of memory. There's a lot more to explore besides what I've said. But yeah, that's Terranigma. It's a awesome game. It does have its flaws, as I pointed out, but it shows you that people, when they make games, they see them as a creation of art, something deep and meaningful to change the way you think about life and yourself. That's what this game does, about life and death, creation, destruction, light and dark, good and evil. And this game will always have a place in my heart, and it's very special to me. But those are my thoughts on Terranigma. If you want, just let me know what you think about it. Any interpretations you may have, anything about the lore. But thank you for watching this video.